Good morning. Good morning. Oh, good. Is anybody else struggling with sinus? Oh, ooh, nice. I'm going to scoot over just a second. I'll be like, I'm going to grab my cup. All right. Oof, crazy hair. We're going to start in about 3 minutes, you guys. We have a ton to cover. I will try very, very hard not to go over. If I do, I'm going to apologize in advance. We got some nuggets to talk about today. All right. We got about 1 more minute, you guys. Literally tagging all my people like, listen, today's good stuff. I need you to really listen today. I want you to jump in. Don't miss it. If you miss it, it's on the Square One Small Businesses. They'll have it on their page. I'll share it over to my page. Shoot, I even throw it on my YouTube channel because we've been able to help people across the country that didn't know about me personally or about Square One. So it's been super helpful for a lot of people. Um, I want to make sure that we continue to serve people as best we can. All right, guys, it is 10 a.m. It is Stephanie Saturday. Thank you again, Square One Small Business Group. Oh my gosh, I have so much fun on Saturdays, you guys. Really, like this is what I look forward to every week. It sounds really lame, I know, because I just love sharing with people, and I love being able to empower people and help them. And I mean, that's why I started what I do for a living, and having that connection in the spaces that I have and being able to bring it to all of you, that's what's really important to me. That's what like lights me up every day. So today we are going to talk about tracking the grant funds, but first and foremost, you guys, um, I sent this as soon as I saw it. I sent it to Morgan at the library last night and was like, "Listen, we got to talk about this first." So the Paycheck Protection Program loan forgiveness application came out yesterday. If you need it, want to go ahead and see it, shoot Morgan an email at mperry@mymcpl.org. You'll see her email throughout our slides too, so you'll have that. Um, there's It's 11 pages, you guys. And there's so much already that I spent 3 hours with one of my good friends last night till 1 a.m. We were going through this because I'm like, this is not, I don't feel good about this. Um, there's, well, first we'll talk about the interest piece. No, but actually, first let's talk about the payroll. 75% of this has to be used on payroll. That's huge, right? And if you don't do that 75%, then you definitely are not going to get the forgiveness. Well, that, as we've talked about before, it is your gross payroll. It is not net payroll checks, which is helpful, but there's a couple of limits, we're going to say. Depending on your pay period, you may have been able to you may be able to do, like, if you're weekly, you may have hit 9 paychecks since you got funded. There's a couple of really good bits in there where, and it says that, if the payroll was incurred, so say that last week of your funding payroll was incurred, and they get paid the following week, you don't have to pay them a week earlier. You stay on your normal schedule, but now those funds are usable, which is huge, big. I mean, some of my clients, that's $25,000. So you can use that. That's really important. The other thing I want to make sure that you know is that there is a cap. No one employee can have more than $15,385 during that period for it to be forgiven. So those funds that have transferred, they have to cap there. So that's one thing I really want to be cognizant of. Some of our business owners, if you're an S corp, a lot of folks have that where, maybe your salesperson's just phenomenal and they're over 100,000. They're limited in this 8-week window to $15,385. That's huge. That's really huge, which is a little disheartening. But we'll deal with that. I'm going to talk about the utilities portion. So 25% of it can be used for utilities or mortgage interest. And those utilities do include, which this is nice, they were very explicit on this. I'm giving you the good stuff first. Electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone or internet access, any of those things that began before February 15th. So this transportation piece is pretty gray. I would avoid that if we can. I would utilize it for your rent, your mortgage interest, electricity, gas, water, telephone, internet access. It says business utility payments. Here's the thing, trash is not mentioned in here, but I think trash should count. We've been counting it for most folks, your regular monthly trash service. I will be asking and researching that. Most trash service isn't super high, so I can't imagine that being detrimental, but I want to make sure I share that out with you. In section 1102 of the Act, it actually stated that you could use the funds for interest on equipment loans. And truthfully, you can use the funds for whatever you want, but to be forgiven, that's that big key, that forgiven. Section 1106, it omitted that and just said mortgage interest. And so that's been kind of a gray area. And I've been advising people for the last week or so, no. The first person that asked me about it, I was like, no, don't do it. And I've been sharing it out with everybody nonstop because I want you to make sure that you're not caught. I don't want you caught with a surprise, right? The loan forgiveness application did verify that it is only mortgage interest. I want you to know you cannot include prepayments on that mortgage. So where some folks were saying, hey, it's okay, you just pay a month ahead, it's fine. You can't. It doesn't work like that. If you maybe you paid health insurance normally at the last minute And so you're always 30 days behind. If you catch that up, that would be acceptable in the payroll part, but not to prepay a mortgage payment or prepay your utilities. That doesn't work. So I want to make sure that we're really clear on that and that we share out the right information. The other thing, you guys, if you go through this, if you get to looking at it and you're like, holy cow, what do I do? Don't get anxiety over it. Don't stress over it. I want you to reach out. We can talk through it. If you're already using a CPA, or if maybe you filled out the PPP on your own, let's chat. Let's see what we can do to help. But I want to make sure that we're there to serve you, but I don't want you to go like, I don't want you to have anxiety over it. Let's work through it together. It's really important to me that I don't want people. You have enough on your plate. Don't let this be part of it. So there is a section on here that you're going to have to attest to and certify all of these things, right? Gabriella, you are so right. There's so many, and you're right. It is changing constantly. It's annoying as can be. SBA shares out facts. There's a document, which I'll go ahead and I'll send to Morgan here after our the EIDL actually does come into play a little bit on this. They factor it in, but this is really for the PPP. But the SBA is releasing facts and they're updating it every week, and it is tracking so you can see what changed. I'll share that out with Morgan. So please shoot her an email if you want any of the information from today. It is, the facts have been helpful. They've been fairly useful. They're very vague. A lot of it, I mean, I would say 2/3 of it is vague. The 1/3, though, it is very useful. So I will definitely share that out with you guys. There in that attestation, we want to make sure that that we are, if you're signing your name to something, that you're 100%. And you're right. It can be used for benefits only the employer paid portion, though. That's it. You can give people raises. One of the things that we have suggested too is that if you do annual bonus, you can split it, do half in June and half at Christmas for two reasons. One, because people, they need the help right now. They're terrified. But for two, then it also helps you as the employer. And that is still falling all within the guidelines. So, you do have that. One thing I want you to be cognizant of is that the loan forgiveness application only asks for the number of full-time employees you had when you applied for the loan originally and when you fill out this application. It's not asking if you jump back to where you should have been, which was the whole purpose of this loan. You have until June 30th to remedy that and make sure you're back to your payroll where it should have been. And so make sure that you comply with that. It is not updated yet in this form, but I put money on it. It's going to get updated. So I want you to make sure that you, maybe if somebody if they refused work, they're like, nah, I don't want to come back, get it in writing, that covers you. But do not, there's just too much gray in that space, and I do expect they'll change that verbiage on this one. There's a whole table that we have to go by just to kind of see where things are at and what they're shaking out. Again, please reach out if you need help. My team is amazing, and I'll be having a meeting with my team this week to make sure that everybody knows, and so we can go through it and just make sure. One thing I will tell you, as you're preparing and tracking, and I've said keep all your payroll reports in a folder and stuff. You're going to need that. You're going to want if you use a payroll processor, a lot of them are scheduling reports already. QuickBooks has created custom reports so that we can use it to substantiate this Schedule A that's going to go with it. So here's the other part. You are required to keep the documentation that supports this for 6 years. I read on page 10 or 11 that we have to keep it for 6 years. Most people purge their documents at 3 to 5. This is something I would definitely encourage you to hang on to. At least the 6. If you have the space, keep it longer. It's not saying that it has to be hard copy. So if you scan it, I think you would be okay, but I would definitely hang on to at least hang on to all of that. Make sure that you've backed everything up. That I would sure hate for somebody. They're going to review them all eventually. If it's anything like the IRS, it'll take 3 years for it to shake out. And 3 years is a long time for stuff to be out of our heads, right? So I want to make sure that you keep it somewhere, back it up. But that lead sheet, the tracker we shared out last week, I want to make sure that you guys use something similar so that you can keep it all together, because your bankers are going to be inundated. It's not a time to be a banker. I wouldn't want to do it. So I want, obviously be kind and patient with them, but remember, they're only as good as this loan application. They have nothing to do with it. So please, 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 please be kind to your banker. So that's my 2 cents worth on the PPP. Like I said, I'm going to continue to research it. One of my good friends and I were going to go through and fill out an application. I have a client who has pretty standard payroll, so I'm going to use that, and we'll fill out an application for forgiveness and kind of see how it flows to make sure that we're well versed in it. And then a good friend of mine has her own business as well. We're going to sync back up next week so that we can talk through it. See, hey, what were my pain points? What were yours? Make sure that we have the same interpretation of it, and just make sure that we're able to serve everybody well. The other thing I will tell you is there are penalties. If you don't comply, there are penalties. Problem is, I can't find the penalties. My good friend last night and we searched and searched, can't find it. So I expect that will come out. I don't know when. I will keep searching for that and we'll keep you all informed. Obviously, we want to stay away from penalties, but I also want you to know what you're up against. If something shakes in the wrong way, like I said, I don't do well with surprises. So I know today is all about tracking the funds, but it was really important to me, you guys, that I share this information, especially since this just dropped last night. I just, literally, I'm on a tech call last night for 3 hours with Bill.com, sending out information, letting Bill.com handle one computer. I'm on the other computer sending out this application like, hey, this dropped. So, I'm going to research it, but to all my clients, and then preparing a newsletter to send out to people who aren't my clients, but they're on my list so that I can make sure everybody's in the know. It's really important to me to empower all of you. So I just want to make sure that you're in the know, but I also want to make sure that don't panic. It's okay. We'll get through it. We'll sort through the application, but I don't want you to panic because it can be overwhelming. And I don't want that for any of you. So that's my TED Talk for today. All right, let's get to the stuff that's really fun. Tracking our funds. This is actually going to be kind of relevant for our PPP stuff too. I know we've been talking about it kind of hit and miss over several weeks, but then grant funding, it's really, really important, you guys, that you track it in your software. And at some point during the slides, you're going to be like, she has lost her mind. You're not the first to say it. You're going to be the last, and it's going to seem redundant, but trust me, it will save you tons of headache if you do it this way on the front end. So, all right, let's get started. So first and foremost, same principle as what we were just talking about, separate those funds. It can be a checking account, savings account, I don't care. Separate it. If you're a nonprofit, you probably have stuff separated anyways. You have restricted funds, but most for-profit folks don't have that. I keep a separate savings account for my business just in case. So I want you to separate those funds. It shows you're a good steward, financial steward of their money, but it also keeps it clean so we can transfer as we go through, the end of the month. Hey, we've done this, so we're going to transfer it. That allows you to have a really good pulse on where you're at, and it gives you another point of reconciliation. So I want to make sure that separate. That tracker we shared out last week. It's a great resource. I want you to keep track of it in a spreadsheet outside of QuickBooks too. Again, seems like you're like, why am I doing this twice? Trust me. Inevitably, we think about something here and we put it in. Maybe it didn't hit QuickBooks, or we recorded it in QuickBooks and we didn't put on that tracker. It gives you another point of reconciliation. That is so, so important. If you don't have that tracker, if you want the slides from today, if you need any of the information we talked about today, I want you to email Morgan at mperry@mymcpl.org. She is my lifeline, you guys. I don't know what I would do without Morgan. So we are going to talk about QuickBooks Online, and the screenshots I have for you are QuickBooks Online. A couple of reasons. One, it's the most commonly used. It's very user-friendly and very cost-effective. If you have a software that what I'm telling you today doesn't make sense to, reach out. As my working with you, reach out, let Morgan know, be like, yo, this doesn't work for Wave or whatever. Whatever it is you're using. If it doesn't work and doesn't make sense, reach out. She'll get us in touch with each other and we'll get you what you need. I want to make sure that I serve, again, you hear me say it all the time, that I serve you well. But again, the most commonly used is QBO because it's cost effective, it's user friendly. You just want to make sure that we, can provide the information you need, which is super important. Like I said, if you're stuck, if you're in the middle of it and you're like, this does not make a bit of sense, let us know. All right. Now we get to the good stuff. When you get a grant, I want you to set up the funder as a customer. So like for all of our examples today, I did the MCPL grant. And I want you to set them up as a main customer. Then and you'll see on the next couple of screens, then we're going to set up, when we get the funding, we're going to create a sub customer. It's really important. Right now you're like, why am I entering it twice? Trust me. Just trust me. But so when we enter the customer, it's just very basic. We're going to go into our sales and customers, and I tried to give you screenshots. Most of you probably know this, but I wanted to give you the full steps. I didn't want to just assume anything because some people, shoot, I just set somebody up for QuickBooks the very first time. And so, some people just don't know. So I want to make sure I give you start to finish. So our lead customer is going to be the grant name. Maybe it's Bank of America Foundation. For today, we're going to use this MCPL grant training because it makes sense. So again, your QuickBooks Online, and yes, I have a test company. I do it for training purposes because QuickBooks has one and it's lovely. It's called Craig's Lawn Service or something. But I like this one because it doesn't have any data. So then as I set something up from new, you guys get to see that whole step and sequence. So to me, that was really important. I was like, I'll pay a monthly subscription for a blank file. I don't care. So when you go to your sales and customers, that'll take us to where we're going to enter the first part. Enter your first customer just like normal. Now, so we're going to create a sub customer for that, the funding we got this year. Well, I'm going to call it Grant Award 2020. The reason we do the sub customer, theoretically, we are going to use this funder more than once, right? We're going to show them we know what we're doing. We're good financial stewards of their money, and we did what we said. When we do that and we present all of our information at the end, what's going to happen is that they're going to be like, man, they did really great work. Let's work with them again, right? As they continue to work with you, if you break out the sub customers by year, then you can, 5 years from now, you'll have grant award 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. I mean, how cool is that, right? So it seems really presumptive, if you will, but you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're showing that you know your stuff, so they should want to give to you again. Some grants, are limited to once ever, but a lot of them aren't. And so I want to make sure that we set it up. And then the other part is it does help us filter because one funder may have 3 different grants. SBA, for example. Say SBA is giving out the EIDL grant and the PPP grant. If you were to treat that just like this, then you would have 2 sub-customers under the parent SBA. And I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, you guys ping in, be like, hey, you've lost your mind. But do ping in and let me know if that makes sense. When you set this one up, the sub-customer, you set it up just like you do a regular customer. But what's really, really important is where I have that red box. You want to drop that click sub customer and you're going to put that parent name right there. This allows them to group together, but it also makes for more robust reporting later down the road. Now, yes, I got a little carried away. We entered the grant. We've got everything in. Our sub customers set up so that we can, again, later we'll get to it, but we'll filter some reports for it. Don't forget, grants mean revenue. Contrary to what SBA's released and the IRS's weirdness for interpreting it, money in is money in. If you didn't put it in as an owner contribution, money in is revenue. Period. If you have a loan, then it's loan. It's not revenue. But money in that you're not repaying, grant money, is revenue. Here's the kind of wiggle on that. Depending on your structure, you may want to have it just as a regular revenue account and income account and say grant revenue. But so there are franchises that you pay a royalty. If you're a franchise and you pay a royalty based off gross revenue, I want you to call it other income. That grant revenue is not part of your gross revenue. Say, for example, maybe it's 15% of your gross revenue you have to pay in. If you put that up there and you got a $10,000 grant, now you're going to give them $1,500 in royalty that you shouldn't have to pay. So it's about making sure that we structure it properly on your P&L, categorize it correctly, so that you can maximize your benefit, right? It's really, if you're stuck, if you do have royalty stuff, you're like, I don't know where how do you want to do this? Reach out. Let's talk it out. Let's make sure that you're set up right. That's going to be really, really important. Because at the end of the day, we want you to make money, right? That's why we go into business. We want you to have the best information and your financials to tell the right story. If we put that grant revenue up top, as if it should be gross revenue, then your royalties, your franchise is like, hey, great, they're doing great. We want more. We want more. Yeah, they are doing great, but not what you're seeing. We want to make sure that you separate that appropriately. Like I said, that can be kind of hairy. So definitely, reach out. it's likely you probably don't have a grant revenue account set up for income. So you'll just set it up. And that, you can do it either in the deposit, like, which on the next screen, you can add new and I'll show you on the deposit. Or if you go into your chart of accounts and then go to add at the top right, you'll have a green button that'll say add new. You just add a new account there. It's, there's usually with most of the softwares, there's more than one way to do something. QuickBooks, it's just as easy to do it in your deposit. So put a pin in that. Give me just a second. Does anybody have questions so far? I do want to make sure that I'm trying really hard to stay on topic. I know I can rabbit trail, but I want to make sure that I, answer any questions as they come up as well. So when you're recording that deposit, you got the money, you put it in your new account, go ahead and go in and enter a bank deposit. And, you'll see that on my example, I have a secondary account that because we're separating our funds, that was our number one rule. And then you want to put who it's from in that deposit. When you put that who it's from right here, that customer, that now puts it over into our P&L. That now says, okay, we have revenue from him, from our grant, and now we can put expenses against it. That's going to make that reporting piece really, really user-friendly. It gives you another sense of tracking too. Then if you are, you can just pull up the customer information. You're going to see every transaction for that customer, which is really helpful. On your account, you're going to pick that grant revenue account. If you don't have it set up, when you hit this drop down right here, when you click that drop down, it'll give you the very top option as a plus sign and says add new. You can just add new right there. If, like I said, if you're going to keep it down in other income, it's going to default to regular revenue. If it is going to be other income, drop that down, not the top box, the second box. When you drop that down, I think you have to scroll a little bit, but you'll find other income. It's usually towards the bottom. All right. We got paid. Now let's use that grant funds. Let's use those funds because we are, we're taking over the world. We are doing great things with our money and we want to grow or, whatever. For this one, you're going to enter, it's going to be real similar to, we want to code it to the customer, which is going to be super important because that's going to put it where I need it and the P&L when we pull reports later. But, so, for this one, we're saying that we got operational funds. If it's a grant for operational funds, however you budgeted, the budget information that you submitted when you made your request, and want you to keep that in mind. We can go in and enter a budget very specifically for that customer. But I want to make sure that, and we'll go through that later. If you need help with that, let me know. Most folks don't because the report that I'm going to show you is really straightforward. But I do want to make sure that, if you need help with that, let us know. And remember, the library has QuickBooks training classes too. When you enter your bill, I entered it as a bill. If you enter it as an expense, fine, same principle. If you enter it as a check, fine, same principle. Put your category in, and over to the right, that customer. Everything's driven off that customer. You don't have to mark it billable, but everything's driven off that customer. That's super important that we have that. So we put all of our information in. We go through, maybe we got a $50,000 grant and it was a 3-month project. Maybe it was a 6-month project. We get all of our information in. We have our separate tracker for, and on your tracker, you put your original budget. So, you can see it bounced up, but you've recorded your deposit, you've recorded all your expenses. I want to make sure that we always want to make sure that your tracker ties to your QuickBooks. If they don't, we have to find out why. Maybe an ACH came out of the bank and you coded it to the customer in QuickBooks, but you didn't record it on the tracker. Maybe you recorded something on the tracker, but you hadn't paid it or hadn't coded it to the customer in QuickBooks. That gives you that check and balance. I know, again, you guys, I know it feels double. It feels very redundant. It has saved so many people more than I can ever tell you. I use a separate schedule for every balance sheet account, period, much less a grant, especially a grant, because I want to know, I want that basis of comparison. And I need that check and balance. I want to be able to say, here's all the information, because reality is your QuickBooks, we can make your QuickBooks say whatever we want. We need to be able to prove it. I know you've heard me say it before. I can make your QuickBooks show that you're a millionaire, but I have to be able to prove that. I have to be able to support that with statements and schedules and show that legit you're a millionaire. So it's really important that you have that secondary schedule. Maybe you get into it and you're like, what am I missing? Maybe it's a bank fee or, a processing fee. It happens all the time, but that's your very first point of reconciliation between QuickBooks and the grant. Then, or I should say QuickBooks and the tracker, sorry. Then when you have that, because you have a separate bank account, you have a bank statement too. So there's our third point of reconciliation. So if our bank statement shows all of our activity, our tracker shows all of our activity, but QuickBooks doesn't, something's coded wrong, right? Or maybe our bank statement and QuickBooks match, but our tracker doesn't. So maybe we forgot something on the tracker. But those three, that triangle is so important. But again, keep those funds separate, because that additional reconciliation for this account itself, huge benefit. You can run reports anytime, right? Because you're keeping your QuickBooks up to date. I always encourage people, and I know not everybody loves accounting like I do. I encourage people to do their finance. I say weekly. If you don't do it weekly, at least do it bi-weekly. Do not wait to the end of the month. When you wait to the end of the month, you are reactive. You are not proactive. When I do even my firm finances, for any of my clients, for myself even, every single week, I make sure everything matches the bank and I make sure everything's entered. I want to be able to go to that QuickBooks file and say, hey, how much do we have left on this grant? If you enter your information weekly, it's really easy to tell. And you can sync your bank up to it through the bank feed. You can go through and just check off, hey, this cleared this week. It's going to make your month end better and smoother. I mean, that's why we do it, because, we have so many clients, it just makes sense. But also it gives you a better pulse for where you're at today. It is not out of the ordinary for our funder to request just interim statements. If you're updating your information weekly, you're able to provide that. Again, I know not everybody loves accounting, but if you do it, it'll take you like 10 minutes, maybe 15 if you do it once a week. How many of you dread it at the end of the month and you're like, man, the last thing I want to do is sit and figure out what didn't clear the bank, figure out why it didn't clear the bank, or what cleared the bank but shouldn't have. Nobody wants to sit and do that unless, I do. But most people dread that, right? So it's really important that we make sure We have that information in. The other thing I'll tell you is if you are a franchise, they have requirements, right? If you have a lender, maybe you have a line of credit and you have to provide monthly reports to the bank. It's not uncommon. So if you can get in that habit, take the 15 minutes, take that, however long it takes. Maybe it takes me 15 minutes, maybe it takes you an hour. If you can devote that time, it's really, really going to benefit you. If you can't, and you can't afford it, you think you can't afford a bookkeeper or a CPA or an accountant, let's talk, let's find you a solution. But when you just let it pile up, you risk a lot. You do. Aside from, clear finances for your business, you may overpay in tax. You may not use your grant appropriately. You may miss a deadline. Let's keep you on target with that, especially with the grants. Again, you can run reports. You can, if you're doing it weekly, we can set up a memorized report that's going to send you a packet for that specific grant every week after you do it. Maybe it sends it to you every Saturday. But what it's going to do is it's going to show you the grant money in and every expense category that's been used against it. So you're going to see what's left because ideally you use the grant funds. So at the end, it should be a zero at the net income line, right? It should be your funds in, what you used it on, zero. That's what we want to see. That's what your funder wants to see. It was a really, I know, long-winded way to go into reports. I'm on a soapbox today, you guys, like a crazy person today. I had to tell poor Morgan earlier. I was like, I'll get off my soapbox. I'll stop. Like I can't. If on the left-hand side of your QuickBooks, when you go into reports, you can do a regular P&L and go through some steps to filter it. It does work. There's like 7 ways to get to it. What I recommend, because it's the most direct path, I recommend you go P&L by customer. You'll see on mine, I have favorites marked up top. It's just what I always do. QuickBooks does default generally the P&L, balance sheet, and the AR summary. Anything I use regularly, I'll just click that star. So if you're in it and you're tracking it, go ahead and fill that star in. So then it pops up top and you're not having to scroll for it. Work smarter, not harder. Make it useful for you. When you go into that report screen on the tab, the default view actually looks similar to this. Scroll up because that's where you can adjust your dates and stuff. I don't know why the default view does that. I don't love it, but I'm always adjusting dates because I'm looking for stuff generally. So scroll up and use that menu at the top and adjust your dates. When you do that, click Run Report. I've heard so many people over the last 3 years. If I had $1 for every time I heard it, I would have pretty good extra savings. But people are like, man, I changed it. Why isn't it updating? You got to hit the Run Report. It's not like desktop that just flips it. When you click that, though, it's going to change that period for you. Now, but it's going to have every customer you have. So if you have 7 grants, it's going to have 7 grants showing. So go to the top right, and there's a big green button that's going to say Customize. When you click that Customize button, you're going to scroll down, and it just literally says the word filter and has a tiny little arrow. Open that up, scroll down, and go to Customer. When you click the Customer button, it'll give you all your customer drop down. And so go down and find that grant. When you do that, that gets rid of all the junk you don't need. And it's telling me specifically this grant. You can, if it's a grant that's going to, be a few months or whatever, go to the Save Customization on the top right. There's another button. It's not green. It's written in green, but it's not filled in. If you click that and save it, you can say, it'll default to your P&L by customer. behind it, put, Grant Award 2020 or BOA Grant 2020. Put that behind it, and then it just memorizes it for you. So it'll have its own tab, and you don't have to go through that filter every time. When you get to that, I know it's a lot of steps just to review a report, maybe why you want to save that customization. So now we can see, here's our income in our grant award. You'll always see the parent. If something's in that parent line, you're like, clearly I have something I need to look at the coding, because that parent line should be 0. If there was 3 grants under here, the parent would be 0. We'd have Grant Award 2020, maybe, grant new revenue line, 2020. You'd have what, there'd be categories, and then they will roll up into one total. So it is nice because it's going to let you see that funders total plus any grants you have under it. Like I was saying, our revenue, our grant fund up top, perfect, 5,000. If, like we talked about, if you're a franchise and you need that other income, you need to drop it below this gross profit line, then all that's going to happen is this line here is actually going to be under the total expenses. It'll be under total expenses, but before net income. So it just moves it, but then that protects you from, in that gross profit percentages for your royalties. So our revenue, what we got, our payment, we're so happy we got that money. And then any expenses are going to show down here. So again, theoretically, we want to use all the grant funds. So this is the one time I'm going to tell you there's no savings. I was also on that tangent this morning too. If you have 5,000 in revenue, then you've reached everything and accomplished, used up the funds like you're supposed to, when this down here at the net income is 0. So we want 5,000 in revenue, we want 5,000 expenses to support that grant. If you go over, then you need to go back and you need to check your coding, because should be the only thing we're coding to this is what we're using, right? What's going towards this grant. It should not be that you can't spend what you don't have. Contrary to what many believe, you can't. So if you got 5,000, you need to cap at 5,000. And that, when we do that, and we have this nice printout, then we share that out with the funder in our packet, our final packet, whether they request or not. We want to share, thank you. Here's what we did with your money. Here's the good we made happen. So it's going to be really important that this does not go below 0. But this, tell me, isn't this just such a nice, clean, easy pick, though, to see, okay, here's where I'm at. Here's what I have left. Now, time for questions. Does anybody have any questions? And if you have questions, you want to go back to the PPP stuff or any of that, totally fine. If you have questions about, hey, I use, QuickBooks Desktop, where do you go? Let's talk it out. Definitely want to make sure that I'm available. I cannot believe I went through that fast. So I'll tell on myself that I do test drive it before I even start on Saturdays. I usually test drive it to make sure that I'm not too long-winded. So I was not coming in this quick. Apparently I was really on a tangent with the PPP. No questions yet? I'm going to go ahead and log into my QuickBooks sample so that, is that Firefox? No, that's Chrome. Let me get a Firefox window so it doesn't send everything crashing, because it will when I use Chrome, and I don't know why. It's a Chrome flaw. But I thought I might go into QBO, into my test company, and kind of show um, how we go ahead and customize those reports. I just want to log in. No questions yet? Does anybody have any questions on the PPP stuff? It's, it changes all the time, you guys. And I really, it makes me so nervous because I don't want anybody caught at the end. I don't want anybody like, oh crap, now what do I do? I can't pay this back. I can't do this. I can't do this. So that's why I just want to make sure that I bring you as much information and accurate information as possible. It's really a big deal for me. I won't get on that soapbox, but there's so many underserved small businesses that I just really want to make sure that we keep that gap bridged. I know Morgan works really hard to do that as well. And so it's really important. You guys, if you, there is a survey at the end, please, please, please fill that survey out. That's what keeps the funding for this program. And I mean, I love this program, right? And we help so many people with all the library programs through the Square One Small Business. What they offer is amazing. What are your top 3? What out for PPPLF? I'm not sure I understand that, Morgan. So I will, you know what though, I am going to kind of piggyback off of the top 3 part. On that PPP and even the EIDL, which I hear some people say it as a word and I just can't pronounce it, you guys, I'm sorry. I'll end up messing it up and it'll be a whole mess. But so the 3 things that I really want you to remember, if you take nothing else away from today, we've talked about the tracking. The top 3 things to watch out for with the PPP loan app, yes, is definitely I want you to watch for the $15,385 cap per individual. Some of you are like, that's a lot of money, and it is. But some organizations that is relevant. So I really want you to watch out for that. I really want you to watch that interest. I will tell you, if you're having trouble forecasting where you think you'll land at the end of this 8 weeks, as far as the 75% payroll, if you can use it all for payroll, do it. That's 75%. That gives me the most angst, I think. If you can use it all on payroll, if maybe you're seasonal, maybe you're in the construction space and goodness sakes, we finally, it's not winter anymore and you're busy, use it in that space. If you can absorb it, do it. So that was a whole rabbit trail. I apologize. So I want you to be cognizant of that 15,385. I want you to really watch that interest. Don't prepay. That's so big. If you, I'll put a pin in that and come back. And then the third thing is watch the utility piece. Because you have to certify that all these things are true and accurate, and that you're signing on the line that, hey, I vouch for this. Make it right. It's got to be right. It's really important that you make it. I don't want it to catch you later. I will continue to look for those penalties so that we know what we're up against if something does go awry. if you, the other thing I'll say is on the payroll, as you're calculating it out, do forecast it, see how you're going to land, see how that, if you're expecting you're going to hit your 75% mark at week 7. If you got funded, say that you got funded, what's today? Today's the 16th. So say that you got funded on the 14th. You got your check, your deposit the 14th of this month. You normally run payroll the 15th. You can count that in. So then it is possible you can actually, especially if you're like a weekly payer, which a lot of folks do pay weekly, you could potentially have 9 paychecks in there. So do know that it starts from the day you got your money, not the day they said, hey, we're going to give you money, the day you got that money. And so I want you to schedule out that 8 weeks. I'm glad we got it a little early. I just don't feel good about it, you guys. I definitely want to make sure that we continue to follow it. That's really interesting. The forgiveness amount, I'll run the calculations and I'll share it out with all of you. You're going to have to provide tax information, payroll reports. You're going to have to provide copies of the checks or the ACH for any utilities. You're going to have to give the amortization schedule for your mortgage. I'm so sorry, you guys. I've not had any coffee today. You'll have to give them on your rent. You'll just have to give them copies of the checks or ACH if you rent your building versus a mortgage on it. And then let's see. There was one other thing that I had highlighted. Where'd it go? We talked about the cash compensation max at the $15,385. And it is kind of confusing on the application because it does go through, like, have you put the full amount, but then it has you back some off. I just want to make sure that we all, I don't want you to get overwhelmed by it. I won't lie. Last night when I got it, I read it 3 times before I even felt confident in what I was reading, and I didn't agree with half of it. So, but there are some really good things in there. Like I said, they're, allowing it that maybe the utility was incurred in that time and you pay it on time, which is like the week later, that's counting. Payroll. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna have coffee even at 11 a.m. But like the payroll's the same way. Like I said, if it incurred that last week, but you don't pay it till the following week, totally fine. It's gonna count. I just want you to be really careful. I'm always leery when there's loan forgiveness. It's going to be really important that we track out those. When you have that tracker sheet and we show what we transferred and what was utilities and whatnot, your CPA is going to have that for year end. Because since it's not revenue, because they're saying it's not revenue, we can't claim those expenses against it. So we are going to have to back that off our bottom line at the end of the year. And so your CPA is going to need that information. So, this tracker and that support packet is going to be relevant in so many aspects. We're going to have to, as accountants, we're going to take that information at the end of the year, make an adjusting journal entry so that we can show, here's our P&L. And what's going to happen then if you got a $30,000 PPP loan and it's all forgiven, then at the end of the year, say you used all $30,000 for payroll. Well, your net income just went up 30,000 because you didn't get to take that 30,000 in expense. You didn't have to claim the revenue, but you don't get the expense. Well, yeah, we want more income, right? But that 30,000 net income now, what's that doing to your tax bracket? So, as we go through this, as we navigate this PPP stuff, it's going to be really important you talk to your tax preparer. If you're used to preparing your own taxes, let's get you some, do some calculations and see. Make sure that you're prepared for what that impact can be. Most small businesses are either a single member LLC, so it's a Schedule C filer, or they're an S Corp. And so they're taking a reasonable salary, but it still flows through. The income still flows through to their tax return. So it's really important that you plan for that. What I don't want anybody to have happen is we get to the end of next year, or we get to next year for tax season, and you're like, oh my gosh, now I have an extra $10,000 in tax I have to pay. Where if we plan a little bit now and we continue to watch this and monitor it, then, if we plan now, we're not going to get taken by surprise. It'd be a little easier to try to figure out how we're going to do $1,000 a month an estimate or something, put money back, than it would be to have that big hit next, March or April, if that makes sense. And, we're talking about one of my least favorite subjects, tax. I like it. I just don't like to do them. I'm working on it. I'm trying to get better. Does anybody have any other questions? Again, you guys, please fill out the survey. Please, please, please. If you get done with this and you're like, man, I should have asked this, or I'm thinking about this, let us know. Reach out to Morgan. Like I said, she'll holler at me. Always, please connect on Facebook. I love new connections. I love learning about everybody's business because, truthfully, the more small business owners that I know, the more I can give them, I can do for them. If it's buy a gift card or, we all have needs, right? You go into business for a need. So I would definitely love to utilize your services or your products. So please connect. Let's stay connected. And let's, just continue to work together. That's the key to all of this, is that we just all work together and try to support one another. You'll hear me say it. Ford and GM were little companies. They were small companies in the beginning too. Everybody starts as a small business. You don't just start as a big multi-million-dollar corporation. And again, you guys, thank you to Square One Small Business for letting me be a part of this. I love it. It's so much fun. It lets me share what I love with all of you, and it lets me help. And that's truly what fires me up every day. And don't forget to fill out the survey. It's really important. And we'll see you guys next week. If anything comes up in the meantime, I'll shoot it out to Morgan. If any of this changes, I'll make sure she knows so she can share it out on their page. But you guys, let's just stay connected. That's going to be what's really going to get us all through it. All right. Well, unfortunately, it's 11. That's good. It's coffee time. But that's it for Stephanie Saturday for today. So reach out if you have any questions, you guys. Have a wonderful Saturday. And please, please, please don't get anxiety over any of this. We're in it together.